This is a podcast from the Business Times.
The first week of January can feel like a lot. The holidays are over, the calendar has reset, and suddenly there's this pressure to have everything figured out. You know, new goals, new habits, a whole new you. But when it comes to money, that kind of pressure can be overwhelming. And honestly, it doesn't have to be that way. Welcome to Money Hacks, a podcast series by The Business Times, where we explore useful financial tips to help you on your money managing and wealth growing journey. I'm Emily Liu. Our host Howie Lim is on vacation, so I'm covering for her today. On this episode of Money Hacks, we're doing something a little gentler. We're taking a pause to check in, to reflect, and to reset. Instead of chasing perfect resolutions, we're talking about all the small, realistic ways to plan for the year ahead without guilt, fear, or burnout. We're in mid-December now. How are you feeling about the end of the year?
I think this year has been incredibly fast-paced for me. I don't know about you, but as I get older, time seems to be faster than usual.
Yeah, I feel like time really contracts now. It's like in the blink of an eye, the year is over.
Yes. But I'm looking forward to the end of the year because I typically put my quarter four of like each year to be more self-reflective and to show more appreciation at the end.
Well, I think it's the first time I've heard someone talk about their own life in quarters. That's very financial advisor of you.
I guess it runs in my blood now.
Patrine Choo is a financial consultant at Great Eastern and a content creator. I asked her to walk me through her end-of-year Q4 reflection routine.
Most of the time for people, like towards the end of the year, they will look at the numbers at the spreadsheet. But for me, like before I look into all that, I will look at the big picture. I'll ask myself questions like, where did my energy go to on most days? Where are my goals that I set? Did I slow down? What has distracted me along the way? So when I have a very clear picture, then I look into the income and expenses because that is the result of my behavior or my focus in that particular year.
For those of us who do need to look at the numbers though, a good old spreadsheet does the trick.
I feel like my routines are pretty set on a month-to-month basis, and closing out the year, I feel like it's really similar. Essentially, I have this spreadsheet system, and basically that just includes a summary of my spending, my income. This helps me keep accountable for my financial picture, understanding where things are going and being more conscious of how I am using and spending my money.
That's Lillian Zhang, a product marketing manager at Google and author of the book, The New Money Rules, The Gen Z Guide to Personal Finance. In case you can't tell, Lillian is super organized, and for her, she's a big believer in routines, not so much resolutions. So her end-of-year reset looks surprisingly calm.
And for the new year, I always make a new version of the spreadsheet that I use, setting intentions for goals I want to achieve in the next year. Like if you want to pay off a certain amount of debt, that's like a really great goal, or saving up X amount for a short-term savings goal, things like that.
So it sounds like you have a pretty good routine figured out and you like have your shit together.
I try.
For someone like me, I don't necessarily have a monthly budgeting check-in, for example. So it can seem quite daunting, I think, to look back on the year. And I think I do have a tendency to feel guilty. Oh shit, I spent more than I quote unquote should have, or invested in some things that didn't end up doing as well as I thought they would. How do you process those emotions that come up? And how do you ground yourself and approach something that can seem so daunting?
Yeah, that's a really great question because money is really emotional, even though we can talk about the tips and the tactical things that you can do. It can also feel, like you said, like very daunting, confusing, or scary for a lot of people. In the book that I wrote, for example, like one of the concepts I mentioned is the ostrich effect. Basically, when an ostrich is stressed, they bury their head in the sand as a means to avoid the situation or like outside world. I think a lot of people also do the same thing with their finances.
Yeah, I feel that very hard, actually. I don't know. There's something about money that gets very scary sometimes. Yeah, and then you really have to fight the instinct to like just not think about it.
Yeah, it could be a stressful topic for sure. And I'd say if you're like starting out on your journey in that case, It's really great just to set healthy expectations or smaller goals going forward. And it's okay to also forgive yourself for a lot of the past things and finding ways to make the small steps forward.
But not all of us have it as together as Lillian does, and that's okay. Patrine has also been there before.
To be honest, for me now, I don't have a very strong emotional reaction. I don't feel fear, neither do I feel avoidant. Not because it's my role as a financial consultant, it's not that. But I began to have a shift in perspective of how the numbers are, like what is the purpose of the numbers. So to me, like now I see the numbers as like information about my own buying behavior.
Wow, so you basically like take the judgment out away from the process.
Yes, I used to have that fear when I was younger because I tend to like to spend and I tend to like to have options. So instead, I think about more of an abundance point of view, like how can I improve on better so that next year I wouldn't fall back onto my old mistakes or old habits.
Yeah, actually, I think overspending is very relatable these days, especially. I feel like, you have such a hard day at work and then just like buy something to feel better. Or yeah, but then it does
I
add up
know.
after a while.
Like one of my most guilty things would be to spend on like Grab delivery because it's so convenient, right? But I tell myself like I need to really stop it. Warren Buffett, he mentioned that you should always try to live below your means, not over. So I'm really trying to put myself back down, being more realistic about what I should be doing right for my own future goals.
For someone who may struggle with overspending, what would you recommend? Like, is there a way to strike a balance between I do want to enjoy my life day to day, but also still be able to live within my means?
I would say that at the first level, you gotta understand what are some of your liabilities and fixed expenses you have. Okay, then like what are you able to automate? Like X number of money goes into the savings every month. So that when you are impulsive spending or when you're having a bad day or, a bad period of time, you know that your finance back end is still working for you. Once you reach there, now it's a lot about your own discipline. And then you ask yourself, like, which is bigger? Like your goal for the future or a current bubble tea, for example? That's the hard part. It's like, for example, you want to get abs and you need to show up at the gym. You have to eat clean and then you have to exercise. Like actually in life, everything is basically fundamentally back to the core, which is how do you be disciplined? How do you be consistent? And then that will show results with time.
Damn, there's no cheat method.
There's a cheap method. You can automate it and, delegate. But I think true ownership or, you reach that level of wisdom when you're able to control like your own behavior.
Still to come. So you have a goal for the new year. What next? We'll share some tips after the break.
Lens on Singapore is now bigger and better. The same deep dive exploration of socioeconomic and geopolitical issues which impact our lives here in Singapore and the region is now a video podcast. If watching a conversation is your thing, join Clarissa Montero in monthly conversations about things that matter. Subscribe to the BT Lens On playlist in the podcast tab of the Business Times YouTube channel and start watching today. BT Lens On Singapore, now available in audio and video.
And now, back to Money Hacks from the Business Times.
Welcome back to Money Hacks. Starting the new year doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just start small.
I'd say my advice would be to stop trying to fix your entire life or everything at once. That could be very overwhelming, and focusing on small steps that you can realistically take to move the needle, like small actions that make you feel more in control to help create momentum for you. So if you pick one thing like automating a bill or taking a step to open a certain account, writing down a goal or taking actions towards that.
So a goal like, I want to, let's say, save up to buy a car or something like that. How do you translate that into actual numbers and plans that you can execute day to day?
In terms of bigger goals, I think it's super helpful to break those bigger goals into smaller steps. Let's say for the car example, every month, if you were to break down the savings goal, like how much would you have to put away into a different account to reach that? And what are some ways to make that easier? Being able to automate your savings or set aside a portion using tech tools so you don't have to think about the motion. It becomes less friction. And something that I've learned over the past few years is like progress really compounds. Sometimes when I'm really grinding or trying to figure something out and I don't see the result tomorrow, it can feel like, what's the point of everything? But sometimes when I look back, your accomplishments and your progress like really compounds over time.
Don't worry if you might be feeling a little lost and don't even know where to start.
For people who normally don't know what is their vision, like they're still figuring out what's there in life or like what they're passionate about, then I would tell them like simply just ask yourself, in a month, how much would you want to have to feel fulfilled, secure, and like happy? It's just very simple because like what you can spend on, you'll naturally feel happy, right?
That's a great question.
I have friends who tell me like, oh, self-care, like facial, nails, like all these things adds up. Then like for the guys, they want to also have like investments, automated, and then like save X number of percentage, or they have a goal to bring their family out on a meal like every week, for example. So add up all the costs, what are the liabilities, and that will be that number that you can start working towards too.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so when I was 25, a very rich friend of mine taught me that. Like he said, just start out with this. Just start out with the monthly income. But as I transit to different careers and I met different segments of people with different net worth, I also realized that, you know, you don't just look at just the small income. You need to look at what is your life, because the money will come in to fit your goals.
Right. But it is a good place to start.
Yeah, step by step.
Yeah, actually, I think a lot of times when you feel stuck, the solution is just to make a move, however small it is.
Correct. The small move, it doesn't need to overthink. As long as this move, does it help me move towards that direction? Because all the consistent steps that you take will get you to the outcome. So it's a long journey for everyone.
If there's one thing to take away from today's episode, it's this. A reset doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be quiet, it can be imperfect, and it can start with just one small step. Whether it's automating your savings, looking at your money without judgment, or simply asking yourself what kind of life you want your finances to support, that's already progress. Thanks so much to Patrine Choo and Lillian Zhang for joining us today. I'm Emily Liu, and this has been Money Hacks by The Business Times.
This is a podcast by The Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts. Or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.